Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today I want to take a look at the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. guys. We have a lot of characters in the game from the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and what's really important, not only that there's the TV show to go along with the characters in-game, which is awesome, and they have the likeness from the show, which is awesome, but the less awesome part, or the awesome part potentially, is that most of them don't have their tier 2 ability yet. We're missing tier 2s for Phil, Lincoln, Daisy, and our boy Deathlok with the changing uniform. Now, I know that Lash and Warwolf already have their tier 2, and we will touch on that a little bit at the end. But what I wanted to do for this video was basically similar to the Let's Make Them Great that we did for Venom, Hulk, Black Panther, and so many other characters. But because we have a very specific group here, because there's such a strong thematic pull, I wanted to do them all in one go. So we're going to touch briefly on what I think, what I'm predicting the tier 2 passives will be for these 4 characters when they finally get their tier 2 passives. I don't know when that's going to be. Hopefully sometime this month when we have like a mid-month patch, but you know, I'll hold my breath for that. Just keep in mind, guys, I won't be able to go as deep and I won't be able to give as many creative ideas for each of these since we have to do 4 in 1 and we don't want a 40-minute video. So let's jump into it, guys. We'll start off with Phil Coulson, the guy whose last name I can never pronounce, the boss, the one who dies in the Avengers movie, spoiler alert. I think that Phil Coulson's tier 2 is going to revolve around his summons. He does have 2 different summons. He's got a Captain America summon for 200% of his stats, and then he's got the Melinda May summon for 140% of his stats. And those 2 combine to take a lot of aggro and deal some pretty decent damage. One is speed, one is combat. So you have the trifecta there of blast, combat, and speed. So it makes Coulson somewhat viable in Shadowlands, although at tier 1 with his damage output, he's not. So we do need him at tier 2 to take full advantage of that typing trifecta. His Coulson special, or Coulson special, for example, I don't know, does pretty decent damage. Overall, he's a pretty unique character in that he has so many summons, and he does have skill co-op cooldown time reduced, much to the same effect as someone like Odin. So he is a pretty cool character. He does get a lot of striker bonuses in World Boss, and they do jump out a lot, and he can press that purple button like crazy. What do I think he's going to get? Well, I think he's just going to get the standard treatment that Ultron, Kingpin, and a lot of the other summon-centric and summon-heavy characters have gotten, which is that he's just going to get more summon health, more summon damage, and more summon duration. It's boring, I know, but that's honestly what I think Netmarble is going to do for him, and maybe give him a slight damage boost, because Coulson's Revenge and Harnessing the Destroyer are both really awful as far as damage and long animations and rooting goes. You basically can only use 3, 4, and 5, so I think they'll try to bump up his damage just to make him a little bit more of a threat. However, I would like to see something more in line with what some of his other passives and other leadership effects do. Like, for example, Full Blast increases striker rate by 50% and decreases the activation cooldown by 50%. So he does call on a lot of different people to come and help him. Leadership has a skill cooldown reduction, and as we saw before, decreasing co-op skill cooldown time by 30%. So he's very much a team player, and I would like to see that, you know, pushed to the next level. It would be cool if he got a tier 2 passive that had some kind of team buff or all team buff, where maybe Captain America and Melinda May, his 2 summons, will jump out for anyone randomly on the team at some point. Maybe he can apply some kind of passive buff to the whole team that increases skill cooldown or something like that. There's a lot of different things they could do to keep up the kind of team leader thematic that they have going on with him. But much like Warwolf, where his tier 2 passive applies to the whole team, it would be nice to have them keep that going and give that also to Phil. Next up, we have Lincoln Campbell, who's most well known for being Mr. Lightning. That's a name I just made up, I'm so sorry. And he's basically just a lightning damage buff for Thor and other lightning damage dealing characters like Nebula and Jane Foster. Otherwise, he's kind of useless. He does have limited exposure in Shadowland because of magnetic repulsion, which can stun lock opponents, but it's very, very difficult to do, and it requires a lot of luck and perfect timing. Aside from that, he's a very cool looking character with awesome animations, but he's way too squishy, and he has no reliable CC aside from the stun lock on magnetic repulsion, which isn't even part of the skill, it's just part of the game mechanics. So I think for Lincoln, they're going to give him some kind of vanilla cookie cutter thing where he basically gets more damage and maybe an increase to lightning damage, or an increase to his health, or something just really straightforward. Maybe a couple seconds of immunity on one of his skills, but it's not going to be anything super interesting. However, I do think they could keep up the lightning theme and make it a little bit more team oriented, because the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. are all about being a team, and he's part of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. They could give him a passive dot damage AoE tier 2 like they gave to Yondu. So Yondu's tier 2, despite the fact that it reads very poorly, it's actually quite strong because it just triggers on its own. It deals, persistent damage, and it's got a pretty decent clear ability, clear speed. So if they gave him something like that, except it was lightning damage, that would be pretty cool. Lightning bolts raining down from the sky, stuff like that. They could also give his tier 2, giving all of his skills a chance to stun or a chance to CC in some way, because they're all lightning, and it could, play on that theme. It could also apply to all team members to just further cement his role as the team leader for a lightning based team, which would be really cool as far as the typing goes, and as far as increasing the power of elemental damage. But I hope that they go a more creative route with Lincoln, because otherwise he's a very, very vanilla character. He literally has nothing on any of his skills. There's no text. This is like your vanilla monsters in Magic the Gathering and Hearthstone who just have no text. It's just a 3-2. It's just a 1-1. It's just a pile of crap. So I hope that they spice him up a little bit. Throw some paprika on that haircut. Let's get something going, Netmarble. Next up, we have Daisy, the resident girl next door. Such a charmer, super cute. Love the pixie haircut, girl. What's your number? Can I have the digits to link to me to you telephonically? The big pull for Daisy is actually in her push. More bang for your punch. You buff and then you do more damage on your next attack, but Daisy's attacks suck compared to Proxima, Odin, and basically any other heavy hitter. So the idea is, much like Warwolf, you buff with more bang for your punch, you switch to a higher DPS, more reliable character, and then you unleash hell. This is the same kind of buff that you see on obelisks, so if you're familiar with those buffs, this is exactly the same. And I think they're probably going to keep the same motif that they gave to Warwolf with a team buff for Daisy Johnson. Now, what exactly they're going to give, I am hard-pressed to say I know what it is. It's kind of difficult to see because there's nothing as much as a team player that really jumps out for me when looking at Daisy. There's nothing on her skill set that really shouts team to me, and giving this thing a team aspect just doesn't really make sense. Chance for anyone to trigger more bang for your punch when they're attacking, it doesn't it doesn't equate because it's a skill. So I think they could do something around her leadership or around her big mistake 4-star passive. So what I was thinking is that she could have a team buff like Warwolf, but it could be related to her leadership. So she could give everyone on the team a chance to proc this shield, even when she's not the leader, even though she's just in the team. And it could be an HP shield, not one that only blocks physical or energy damage. It could be just a shield, kind of like drastic density enhancement. So she could have a tier 2 passive that just basically gives everyone on the team the ISO 8 set bonus of drastic density enhancement with I believe is a 20 or 32% HP shield. That would be kind of cool, but kind of useless in this meta. It would be more cool if they did something like Odin, where they gave her tier 2 passive the ability to pass on a shield like Odin's. If you guys don't know, Asgardian Barrier guards for 3 hits every 2 seconds, so it's refreshing constantly until the skill wears off. If Daisy could pass a buff like that onto her teammates, or if she could have that buff up, 75% of the time, that would be really cool. That would continue her effect and her role as a support character, but it would do it in a more defensive way, which could kind of differentiate her from Warwolf, which would be really cool. I don't have a lot of ideas actually for Daisy because the character honestly doesn't have a lot of interesting jump out, points to me. She doesn't seem very unique thematically as far as they've put her in the game and how they've illustrated her and conceptualized her. So if you guys can give me some suggestions specifically about Daisy, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Lastly, we have Deathlok, and Deathlok was interesting because a while back he was one of the most important meta characters for Alliance Battle because he could switch between combat and blast, because he has the physical leadership, and because his 5th skill, Perfect Shot, has the hidden ability where it does more damage if it's hitting more mobs. Now if you're not familiar with this, you're gonna have to go back into the history of the game and watch some videos, but another character that has this trait is Agent 13 on her 5th skill, Extreme Diversion. It doesn't say it, but it does more damage the more mobs you catch in the radius of the skill, and this was used to great effect way back when to clear out all of the Ultron mobs that would spawn in the Alliance Battle mode against the Frost Beast. That was a long time ago, guys. Deathlok is basically useless nowadays. He's not even good in Shadowlands. He's literally not good anywhere aside from being purely a leadership. His skills don't have any CC. He has no way to defend himself with any kind of iframes or immunity. Nothing. He's probably the worst character of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that we've covered so far. The only thing that makes him unique is the Centipede Serum, where he deals more damage to machine types and he gets less damage from machine types. The thing is, there just aren't that many machine type villains or heroes or game modes or anything like that in the game. The only one that was really relevant for him at the time was Alliance Battle, but he's just no longer viable at all in any way, shape, or form for Alliance Battle. So we need to cook up something new and fresh for Deathlok. And I think it would be really cool if they gave him something totally new, like Team Buff. Again, we're going with something that applies to all allies, and it increases explosive damage. And they could introduce a new damage type. It could just be the explosive tag, and I'm thinking on stuff like missiles, on stuff like rockets, and you can think of lots of characters: Punisher, Hulkbuster, War Machine, Iron Man. There's lots of different characters who have explosive skills, and I don't mean that they look explosive. I'm not talking about Nate Dogg and Snoop Dogg. I'm talking about actual bombs, rockets, missiles, and other incendiary devices, rocket raccoons, mines, that actually blow up. And that would be really cool, and that would make him a very niche but perfect fit for certain characters and certain team-ups, and I think that would be really awesome. They could give him, again, an all allies team buff tier 2 passive where it increases all allies AoE damage. They have yet to type skills as either single target or AoE, so that might be a little bit difficult to word. I don't think that's probably in the realm of possibility, but one can hope. And especially considering how Perfect Shot works mechanically, it does fit his character. They could also give him the all allies buff for what he has on Perfect Shot. So what I mean by that is the fact that Perfect Shot deals more damage the more mobs you hit, and less damage the less mobs you hit. He could have a tier 2 passive that just cranks that up to 11, and maybe for him and all of his skills, or for all allies on the team, that effect is in place. So if you're doing one-on-one stuff, you're not going to do that much damage, maybe 50% effectiveness, which is pretty bad. But if you're hitting a whole whack of mobs, a huge group, a huge clump, you will do a lot more damage, let's say up to 150%. So those are just my thoughts, guys, about the different characters for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and what kind of tier 2 passives they could get, what's in line with their characters. Thank you for the Dimension Rift. If I were to guess what Deathlok is going to get, I think it's just going to be a cookie cutter, increased damage, increased skill damage, and maybe, some immunity or some ignore dodge or something like that. Really basic, really boring. I hope he gets something exciting, guys. As far as the two characters that I mentioned at the beginning, Lash and Warwolf, who already have their tier 2s, I do think that they could use a little bit of a tweak, and I think that it would be the perfect time to do it when they do introduce the tier 2s for the 4 Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. who don't currently have it. So in Lash's case, I think he's got a lot of really cool features that just don't work strongly enough to make him a viable character. But I think Lash could be a really important meta-defining character if they just increased some of the numbers of his damage and of his skills. So what do I mean? Well, for starters, Energy Steal is super interesting, except the cooldown is just horrendous. So when he gets hit, he increases his damage for all energy damage taken for up to 10 seconds. Now, it doesn't say here that it has a limit, so you could technically get, you know, up to 200% all attack, which is insane. It's just that with the 30-second cooldown, you're not going to be able to use this more than once reliably in a fight, so they need to adjust that. Secondly, they need to adjust the all defense debuff, because 28% is just not enough, and because this skill Disintegrate is tied to his tier 2 passive, which gives him immunity, it's really the skill he's going to be casting most often. So if you could bump that up, Netmarble, to like 35 or 40% and really make it a reasonable number and an impactful number, it could make Lash a super interesting character. If you keep getting hit by him, you're going to lose your all defense and you're going to take massive damage. But you also have to be careful, because if you hit him too hard with Energy Steal, you're going to take a massive shitload of damage. So he has a really cool kind of, you know, yin and yang going on with his 4-star passive and his tier 2/2nd skill Disintegrate. I love it. I think it's really awesome, and I just wish that they would tweak it a little bit, because right now the problem with Lash is he just doesn't do enough damage. He has the survivability now with the immunity on tier 2 passive for Disintegrate, but he just doesn't crank out enough damage even with this buff and debuff. So I think if they just tweak the numbers a little bit, they could make Lash really relevant and a very cool, unique character to play as. As far as Warwolf goes, Warwolf's fine. Don't change Warwolf. He's good. So anyways, guys, let me know what you think about the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm sorry I don't have more TV show related quotes and ideas for you. I am still not watching the show. I have not caught up with Daisy and Friends, so don't chastise me too much, guys. But let me know what you think about the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Let me know what kind of tier 2 passives you want to see for Phil and Daisy and Lincoln and Deathlok and Lash. Well, you know about Lash. And anyways, guys, of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.